Give me a like if you ever read something in the Bible and thought, why is this even here? Or better yet, give me a subscribe if you are like me and ever thought, this is so boring. I have often felt that way about chapters like Matthew 1, when we see an endless list of people called a genealogy. Who cares, right? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you the fascinating secret about biblical genealogies, the secret to living like a guy named Boaz, and what a kinsman redeemer is, not only historically, but how it relates to your life. And as always, there are chapters listed down below. So let's get started. What I've learned is that the genealogies are like sports to me. If I don't know about the players on the field in any sport, well, besides football, of course, because yeah, it's football, I'm uninterested in the game. I could care less about watching. I never watched a soccer game until my son started dating a soccer player in college, and all of a sudden, I had to learn the rules and I watched with enthusiasm. I didn't care about college basketball until I knew a couple of players on the Baylor Bears National Championship basketball team, 2021. Sic 'em Bears. Ring that bell if you saw Baylor beat Gonzaga in that championship game. I was there. When we know the players on the field or the court, you have a vested interest in the outcome. We care what happens to them. This is why genealogies matter. Genealogies are a list of our ancestors. You could say our past. What makes us who we are? Let's see if we can connect some dots for you and get you interested in how this story begins and ends. The beginning. You've heard about Ruth and her unwavering devotion to her mother-in-law, Naomi. Quite admirable. And you've seen how God showed her what his devotion looked like and felt like. A love that would never walk away. A Hesed love, like Kinsey told you about, linked right up here at the top of the video. We've seen Naomi's character as one who struggled with what God was doing, but learned that he sustains us in every situation, and she learned to trust his sovereignty. Now, let's talk about Boaz. Boaz seems to be the hero, the kinsman redeemer of the story. I'll get back to what that means in a minute, but I don't think he always felt that way. Let's look at his genealogy, his past. Boaz comes from a father named Salmon. No, not the fish. And his mother was named Rahab. You may remember Rahab if you know the story of Jericho in Joshua 2, 1 through 16. Give it a read to refresh your memory. She was a woman of Jericho with a pretty bad reputation, and she was a pagan, one who worshiped other gods besides the one true God. But she made a life-changing decision to hide 2 Jewish spies in Jericho. This saved her life and the life of her family when the Israelites defeated and took over the land of Jericho. She had clearly chosen a life to follow God and turn from her sinful ways, but that didn't erase her past. It followed her as she became part of the Israelites in Jericho. Yes, she had done a good thing, but she was still, well, Rahab. That girl. Fortunately, she got a second chance and was married to Salmon, a man of the tribe of Judah, and they had a son, Boaz. Now, we don't get to hear much about Boaz's childhood. In fact, it skips right to his adulthood. But we can imagine, can't we? Maybe he was made fun of on the playground because of his mother's heritage as a foreigner. Or maybe even as an adult, he was not seen as an official leader because of his mother's pagan worship past. But Boaz seemed to rise above any hint of judgment toward him. See, Boaz knew that reputation is what others think of you. However, character is what others know of you. We know that Boaz was a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech. He was a good businessman who cared about his workers. He greeted his workers with a blessing. He was a generous man who fed the hungry. He is described as a mighty man of valor. I love that word, valor. It sounds so majestic and strong. That is what we know about Boaz. See, it didn't matter what family he was from or even what happened in his past. What mattered was how he would choose to live in the present in order to impact the future. Are you stuck in your past or think that because where you came from, God can't use you? Keep listening. I bet you might change your mind. So how would Boaz impact the future? Our future? Let's dig in and see. I think Boaz saw Ruth in the fields and immediately thought of his mother. the once foreigner. He knew how to have compassion on her because his father had once had compassion on a foreigner who seemed desperate for a change as well. Boaz was living out what I believe he had been taught at home. See, this love story has all the markings of a Hallmark Christmas movie. I love me some Hallmark, but the plot seems to always be the same. Girl from another town moves to a new town for a fresh start, but people are always skeptical of the new girl in town, except the cute single guy that seems to have just been waiting for her to show up. Well, as we have heard about Ruth in the past few weeks, we have learned that she left everything she knew to follow Naomi. She committed to staying with Naomi and caring for her, even choosing to love her God, the one true God. The community around them recognized this loyalty in her and began to admire her loyalty even for a foreigner. Boaz heard of it too, and because he is a man of honor, he did what he could to help them by feeding her and sending leftover barley home with her to feed Naomi as well. But it goes deeper than that. Boaz was the kinsman redeemer for Naomi. What is a kinsman redeemer? This was the closest male relative to her after the death of her husbands and her sons. A kinsman redeemer was male, and his job was to restore those in the family who were in trouble or in danger. This reminds me of someone, his name is Jesus, and he was sent to be the redeemer for us, all of us who were in trouble and in danger, but more than on that later. Naomi and Ruth needed a kinsman redeemer. So in chapter 3 of Ruth, Ruth makes Boaz aware that she is in need of the redemption he can offer as the leader of her family and maybe husband, if he is willing to take that responsibility. But he says, plot twist, as all good Hallmark movies have, he has to talk to the leaders of the community, including one kinsman who might be closer than he in relation. Naomi and Ruth had to wait for his response. Ugh. The wait must have been excruciating. Boaz goes to these leaders willing to take Ruth as his wife, and the other kinsman bows out of the responsibility to care for Naomi and Ruth. See, just like Boaz, Jesus is willing to take you on with all of your past and your reputation in order to care for you, provide for you, and help build you into the character he sees in you. But let's get back to our story. In chapter 4, we see the resolution of the story. And just like in a Hallmark movie, Boaz and Ruth are married. The townspeople pray a blessing over them and wish them well. Soon after, they have a son named Obed. The end. Wait! We have to talk about the end. Sure, that's the story of Ruth and Boaz, but do you see it? Do you see how God is weaving together a future for a full nation of people through regular people like you and me? Think about Boaz, just a regular guy with a not so great family history, yet he follows and obeys God and is prepared to step in where God leads him. Ruth left everything she knew and her own culture to obey God and just see what might be available to her in a new land. She just happens to collect barley out of Boaz's field. He just happens to be the kinsman redeemer for Naomi and her family. See, God was putting the story together. He only needed willing hearts and lives in order for it to play out. And let's be honest, this is way better than any Hollywood Hallmark love story because it doesn't end here. If you look in your Bibles at the boring genealogy I was talking about at the beginning, in Matthew 1, 5 through 6, you will suddenly see some names that are now familiar to you. See, this is the family line of Jesus. Salmon had Boaz, who had Obed, who had Jesse, who had the father of David. Yes, King David. And we know that King David was the family line that led to Jesus. Fast forward to Matthew 1:16. What? You mean all of those imperfect people with their mistakes and sins are part of the family line, the heritage, the important players on the field and the court who gave us Jesus? Yes. How cool God is. As our kinsman redeemer, he can take any mess of life we are willing to surrender to him and use it to impact the future of his kingdom. Mind-blowing, isn't it? While your family history or your past choices may not line up with what you or others consider worthy material, God can use it. He can redeem you just like he used Boaz to redeem Naomi and Ruth. What matters is how we choose to live in the present in order to impact the future. So don't get stuck in the past or your family or your choices. Offer all you have to the Redeemer, Jesus, and He can make a beautiful story from your life.